After a time, the talk reverted to the history of witchcraft. "Did you ever look into it?" asked the host. "Yes, I did," said the secretary. "I went so far as to read it." "Was it as bad as it was made out to be?" "Oh, in point of style and form, quite hopeless. It deserved all the pulverising it got. But, besides that, it was an evil book. The man believed every word of what he was saying, and I'm very much mistaken if he hadn't tried the greater part of his receipts." "Well, I only remember Harrington's review of it, and I must say if I'd been the author it would have quenched my literary ambitions for good. I should never have held up my head again. It hasn't had that effect in the present case. But come, it's 3:30, I must be off." On the way home, the secretary's wife said, "I do hope that horrible man won't find out that Mr. Dunning had anything to do with the rejection of his paper." "I don't think there's much chance of that," said the secretary. "Dunning won't mention it himself, for these matters are confidential, and none of us will for the same reason. Carswell won't know his name, for Dunning hasn't published anything on the subject yet. The only danger is, Carswell might find out if he was to ask the British Museum people who was in the habit of consulting alchemical manuscripts. I can't very well tell them not to mention Dunning, can I? It would set them talking at once. Let's hope it won't occur to him." However, Mr. Carswell was an astute man. This much is in the way of prologue. On an evening rather later in the same week, Mr. Edward Dunning was returning from the British Museum, where he had been engaged in research, to the comfortable house in a suburb where he lived alone, tended by 2 excellent women who had been long with him. There is nothing to be added by the way of description of him to what we have heard already. Let us follow him as he takes his sober course homewards. A train took him to within a mile or 2 of his house, and an electric tram a stage farther. The line ended at a point some 300 yards from his front door. He had had enough of reading when he got into the car, and, indeed, the light was not such as to allow him to do more than study the advertisements on the panes of glass that faced him as he sat. As was not unnatural, the advertisements in this particular line of cars were objects of his frequent contemplation, and, with the possible exception of the brilliant and convincing dialogue between Mr. Lamplow and an eminent K.C. on the subject of pyretic saline, none of them afforded much scope to his imagination. I am wrong. There was one at the corner of the car farthest from him which did not seem familiar. It was in blue letters on a yellow ground, and all that he could read of it was a name, John Harrington, and something like a date. It could be of no interest to him to know more, but, for all that, as the car emptied, he was just curious enough to move along the seat until he could read it well. He felt, to a slight extent, repaid for his trouble. The advertisement was not of the usual type. It ran thus: "In memory of John Harrington, F.S.A., of the Laurels, Ashbrook, died September 18th, 1889. 3 months were allowed." The car stopped. Mr. Dunning, still contemplating the blue letters on the yellow ground, had to be stimulated to rise by a word from the conductor. "I beg your pardon," he said. "I was looking at that advertisement. It's a very odd one, isn't it?" The conductor read it slowly. "Well, my word," he said. "I never see that one before. Well, that is a cure, ain't it? Someone been up to their jokes here, I should think." He got out a duster and applied it, not without saliva, to the pane, and then to the outside. "No," he said, returning, "that ain't no transfer. Seems to me as if it were regular in the glass. What I mean in the substance, as you may say. Don't you think so, sir?" Mr. Dunning examined it, and rubbed it with his glove, and agreed. "Who looks after these advertisements, and gives leave for them to be put up? I wish you would inquire. I will just take a note of the words." At this moment there came a call from the driver. "Look alive, George! Time's up." All right, all right. There's something else what's up at this end. You come and look at this here glass." "What's gone on with the glass?" said the driver, approaching. "Well, and who's Harrington? What's it all about?" "I was just asking who was responsible for putting up the advertisements in your cars, and saying it would be as well to make some inquiry about this one." "Well, sir, that's all done at the company's office, that work is. It's our Mr. Timms, I believe, looks into that. When we put up tonight, I'll leave word, and perhaps I'll be able to tell you tomorrow if you happen to be coming this way.' This was all that passed that evening. Mr. Dunning did just go to the trouble of looking up Ashbrook, and found that it was in Warwickshire. Next day he went to town again. The car, it was the same car, was too full in the morning to allow of his getting a word with the conductor. He could only be sure that the curious advertisement had been made away with. The close of day brought a further element of mystery into the transaction. He had missed the tram, or else preferred walking home, but at a rather late hour, while he was at work in his study, one of the maids came to say that 2 men from the tramways were very anxious to speak to him. This was a reminder of the advertisement, which he had, he says, nearly forgotten. He had the men in. They were the conductor and driver of the car, and when the matter of refreshment had been attended to, asked what Mr. Timms had to say about the advertisement. "Well, sir, that's what we took the liberty to step round about," said the conductor. "Mr. Timms, he give William here the rough side of his tongue about that. According to him, there weren't no advertisement of that description sent in, nor ordered, nor paid for, nor put up, nor nothink, let alone not being there, and we were playing the fool taking up his time. Well, I says, if that's the case, all I ask of you, Mr. Timms, I says, is to take and look at it for yourself, I says. Of course, if it ain't there, I says, you may take and call me what you like. Right, he says, I will, and we went straight off. Now, I leave it to you, sir, if that ad, as we term 'em, with Harrington on it weren't as plain as ever you see anythink. Blue letters on yellow glass, and as I says at the time, and you borne me out, regular in the glass, because if you remember, you recollect of me swabbing it with me duster. To be sure I do, quite clearly. Well? You may say well, I don't think. Mr. Timms, he get in that car with a light. No, he tell William to hold the light outside. Now, he says, where's your precious ad, what we've heard so much about? Here it is, I says, Mr. Timms, and I laid my hand on it. The conductor paused. Well, said Mr. Dunning, it was gone, I suppose. Broken? Broke? Not it. There weren't, if you believe me, no more trace of them letters, blue letters they was, on that piece of glass than... Well, it's no good me talking. I never see such a thing. I leave it to William here if... But there, as I says, what's the benefit in me going on about it? And what did Mr. Timms say? Why, he did what I give him leave to, called us pretty much anything he liked, and I don't know as I blame him so much neither. But what we thought, William and me did, was as we seen you take down a bit of a note about that, well, that lettering. I certainly did, and I have it now. Did you wish me to speak to Mr. Timms myself and show it to him? Was that what you came in about? There, didn't I say as much, said William. Deal with a gent if you can get on the track of one, that's my word. Now, perhaps, George, you'll allow as I ain't took you very far wrong tonight. Very well, William, very well. No need for you to go on as if you'd had to frogs march me here. I come quiet, didn't I? All the same for that. We hadn't ought to take up your time this way, sir, but if it so happened you could find time to step round to the company's office in the morning and tell Mr. Timms what you've seen for yourself, we should lay under a very high obligation to you for the trouble. You see, it ain't being called, well, one thing and another, as we mind, but if they got it into our head at the office, as we seen things as weren't there, why, one thing leads to another, and where we should be a 12 months hence, well, you can understand what I mean. Amid further elucidations of the proposition, George, conducted by William, left the room. The incredulity of Mr. Timms, who had a nodding acquaintance with Mr. Dunning, was greatly modified on the following day by what the latter could tell and show him, and any bad mark that might have been attached to the names of William and George was not suffered to remain on the company's books. But explanation there was none. Mr. Dunning's interest in the matter was kept alive by an incident of the following afternoon. He was walking from his club to the train, and he noticed some way ahead a man with a handful of leaflets, such as are distributed to passers-by by agents of enterprising firms. This agent had not chosen a very crowded street for his operations. In fact, Mr. Dunning did not see him get rid of a single leaflet before he himself reached the spot. One was thrust into his hand as he passed. The hand that gave it touched his, and he experienced a sort of little shock as it did. It seemed unnaturally rough and hot. He looked in passing at the giver, but the impression he got was so unclear that, however much he tried to reckon it up subsequently, nothing would come. He was walking quickly, and as he went on glanced at the paper. It was a blue one. The name of Harrington in large capitals caught his eye. He stopped, startled, and felt for his glasses. The next instant the leaflet was twitched out of his hand by a man who hurried past, and was irrecoverably gone. He ran back a few paces, but where was the passer-by, and where the distributor?